Good morning and welcome to the trade setup right here on BQ Prime. I'm Neeraj Shah and let's take stock of the global news flow first before we move on to the markets. Mark Zuckerberg gained a record $12.5 billion in a day as Meta rebounded. Yesterday was all about what Facebook or Meta did in trade. Fabulous showing, and it will show in the dichotomy between the Nasdaq and the Dow in a moment. Google CEO said its Chat GPT rival is coming soon as a companion to search. Frankly, Chat GPT is the talk of town, and it's led Google to try and figure out how they can do something in a fashion to kind of encounter what is arguably the strongest push to their search dominance in a long time, really. Oil is set for weekly losses as China optimism dims. Gold slipped from 9-month peaks as dollar regains some bit of lost ground. Let's try and examine that as well. First, the meta impact on Nasdaq. That index was up about 3%, whereas the Dow was extremely flat. There was some bit of tech performance in yesterday's session as a result of which the Nasdaq did what it did. But post markets, result disappointments from Apple, Alphabet, and Amazon. On Apple and Amazon for sure, and Amazon's numbers um, were were so in case of Apple, the numbers were weak, but the guidance was okay. In case of Amazon, the numbers were okay, but the guidance was weak. So while the Nasdaq looks 3% higher, it is already down in the futures trade. So bear that in mind. Bring up the other cues and remember gold slipped because dollar per se gained a little bit versus others, and you can see that 101.68, so marginal uptick for the dollar index. The VIX was up marginally. The 10-year yield steady about 3.38, and I know the Fed is trying to warn the market, but the market is having none of it strong showing per se and showing in the way the 10-year yield is behaving as well. The SGX Nifty could be indicating a start marginally in the green, 17,710, yeah, in or about that. Now, what's the trade setup for the day? A bunch of quant indicators that I look at are showing very strong possibility of trading gains ahead on the upside, I mean. So it could be interesting. And by the way, today we have a very sharp conversation at 11:30 with somebody who can give us a lot of sense about trading, Gautam Shah. So it'll be interesting to do. We'll talk about it a bit as well at the end of the trade setup. Momentum readings on the daily charts are in oversold zone as per technical chartists, and therefore that too could lead to a bit of a bounce. Who knows? The third point that kind of vindicates this is that the Nifty Mid Cap 100 is now trading at an important support. The budget day low of about 26,900 coincides exactly with the kind of lows that this index clocked in September 2022 before bouncing back, and December 2022 before bouncing back. So multiple cues kind of indicate that, hey, we might be uh, looking at a bounce ahead. I don't know whether it happens today, whether it happens Monday, whether it happens at all or no. I'm just saying that there are indications coming in that there could be a bounce ahead. So be mindful of that. And of course, to my mind, banking probably remains the pocket to look at, and to an extent, autos continuing that merry run. Um, IT selectively, and midcap IT is doing very well if results are good, and we've seen that happening with KPIT Tech. So banks, autos, to an extent IT, but I still believe banks would probably be the fulcrum of this uptick if it were to come. So be mindful of that. Yesterday, the buy and sell numbers what not necessarily the largest, so let's leave that out and let's move to the stocks which matter today. Now, Adani Enterprises individually has a bad news flow as well, that it's been removed from the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. It came in just in the last 15 minutes, so we couldn't give you those graphics. But remember, that is a small uh, issue as well, for whatever it may be worth. I don't really have an insight into what kind of an impact could that have. But the thing that has happened is that NSE has put Enterprises Port and Ambuja Cement under the ASM framework. The intraday trading will require 100% upfront margin. This move will likely curb a lot of speculation and short selling, I would reckon. It could work the other way as well, which is, on the long side also, it kind of curbs, because it's just the additional surveillance measure that the exchange puts in. But in the case of the Adani Group stocks, because they've been beaten down and they're being shorted, I think this likely curbs that, because 100% upfront margin is a fairly large margin as well for these stocks. So maybe this supports the stocks. Ambuja was anyways okay yesterday, but Ent and Port, both of them corrected quite viciously in trade yesterday. And therefore, maybe for these two stocks, it could be a bit of a boon. Let's wait and watch if that happens. I would suspect that it would, but these days it's just very, very difficult to call the kind of volatility that we experience in the Adani Group stocks. So best not to try and second guess. In terms of life insurance firms, they've been beaten down as well. Now, SBI Life Insurance, in a notice to the exchange, has said that the share of the non-linked policies with annual premium above rupees 5 lakhs in the total annual premium equivalent is under 2%. And therefore, they are saying that it may not impact them as much. Of course, the point is if there are a lot of policies which total up to anyways over 5 lakhs, then that might be a problem too. Now, HDFC Life has said that their impact is about 10 to 12%. SBI Life is saying that impact is about 2%. They all have been beaten down. It was 10% on the budget day, another 3-4% HDFC Life, for example, in trade yesterday. Maybe, just maybe, a bit of uh, the selling may not be so intense in today or the days to come. Who knows? Would be interesting to see. A couple of index names. Titan, of course, the results came out during market hours, but in the con call, I think a couple of things which stood out for me that they said that there's a good demand in Jan, including gold and studded jewelry, but the competitive situation is intensified and incremental growth is seen at lower gross margins. That's the point, and I think I'll be talking to the management today at I think about 9:40 to try and get a sense of what they believe would come in the quarters ahead. The long-term story is anyway strong. The question is only about the very short term. I've not gotten you the numbers and details of Tata Consumer, frankly, because almost on all counts, except for the bottom line, the numbers were in line. The bottom line too was higher because of an exceptional gain. Otherwise, even that would have been in line. So just know that Tata Consumer numbers were largely in line with estimates, and there's no big uh, uh, move that will necessarily come there because of the numbers. Now, just keep in mind also the two index names that we spoke of, Titan and Tata Consumer. For Titan, Morgan Stanley believes that the results are in line, but the outlook is positive. Their price target, they've actually, okay, from 3,000, they've raised to 3,003 rupees. But essentially, their stock rating is overweight, as I said, and they believe that jewelry there is market share focus, and on uh, demand trends there is a positive outlook. So therefore, they are constructive on Titan. So keep that in mind. On Tata Consumer, and I just have this note in front of me. We'll just take a moment to read that out as well. There was market share loss in tea business that is a negative, but the companies gain market share in salt. Uh, the margin delivery would be weighted for most people, but yeah, brokerages are largely seemingly overweight. Target prices are higher as well. So on both the index names that we had to talk about, this is the kind of uptick that has come in. By the way, on life insurers as well, just before I move on to the other names, I think everybody's talking about how some clarification is needed. How for HDFC Life, this segment is 10-12%, SBI Life is 2%, ICICI Pru is 6%, Max Life is 9%. So, well, that's very much. Anyways, that's on the larger names. Now, let's move on to some of the mid-sized names. Apollo Tires numbers. The numbers looked okay, and the softening key raw material prices are probably near-term tailwinds as well. 12.5% growth in revenues, marginally above estimate, 6,422 versus 6,201. EBITDA margin at 14.22 versus 13.3%, so above. PAT, 30.68% growth, 292 versus 272. And remember, now the prices have softened a bit more, and therefore you will see the full impact because they will not be using the earlier inventory, I reckon. And therefore, Q4 might be better than Q3 on the margin front, and which is why Apollo Tires has clocked in a beat. And I think the first cuts that I read were all positive. Mahanagar Gas, the numbers looked okay too. Revenues up 62%, 1671 versus 1721. There it's kind of flattish or marginally lower, but EBITDA margins did okay. Net profit much above estimates and much above Bloomberg estimates. So that is doing okay too. So do watch out for that. Crompton Greaves Consumer Electricals, revenues up 7.5%. Margins are 10% versus 14.29. The Bloomberg estimates were 13%. Net profit down 42% at 85 crores, much, much lower than estimated. Clearly, the numbers left a lot to be desired. So maybe this is a stock that gets beaten down in the session today. Who knows? But do watch out. The numbers, not at all good. Um, I've been harping on autos for the last 7, 8 days on trade setup. And just look at the kind of gains that are happening for some of the others as well. So Amara Raja Batteries, in yesterday's session, it gained another 3.5% after gaining 4.5% on Thursday, or on Wednesday, excuse me. Stock is up with higher trading and delivery volumes, which is at 1.3 and 1.5 times the weekly averages. So clearly there is some buying being seen here in Amara Raja. And Ashok Leyland didn't have a really strong day, but a 3% up move. It closed at the highest level in 2 months. The derivative positions look okay too. You will hear the management today a bit later on as well. Um, yeah, so good going for this one too. Let's wait and watch how it shapes up. So net viewers, a lot of broader market sentiment determined by the Adani Group stocks. I would reckon that some semblance of sanity for these three, which have been put under ASM, might come today, but who knows? I'm not the one to predict. And in general, by and large, and definitely not in stocks which are seeing fairly high volatility, which these stocks are seeing right now. So I'll kind of stay away from there. What seems to be a more reasonable uh, thing to kind of predict, if you will, is that most indicators indicate that there could be some bit of a reversal from Indian markets perspective as well. And that is something you want to watch out for. I'm not predicting it. And of course, if you want to see somebody who predicts it more confidently than me, then at 11:30 a.m. today, I think we've got 11 a.m. today, between the two, 11:30. Okay. Yeah, 11:30. I think we've Gautam Shah of Goldilocks Premium Research. He'll come and talk about his view on what to do in the indices currently and what are the components that one should bet on. So I think that's a conversation that I'm looking forward to. Of course, before that, there are a bunch of corporate conversations as well as a conversation with Nilkan Mishra of Credit Suisse with his views on the budget and the markets. So that is something that you might want to tune in for as well. Like yesterday, it was a packed day, and today too, the clutch of very important and very good conversations lined up through the day on BQ Prime. So you want to tune in for some of those. Thanks for tuning into the trade setup today, of course. Have a great day ahead and have a good weekend.